Well, first, I'd like to ask everyone if you have your cell phones to mute them, or better yet, turn them off so that we don't get interrupted during the meeting. As you know, Mark is the president of the Valencia Toastmasters and been doing a fantastic job this year. Mark Richards, ACS, ALS, is proud to present what he considers to be the final exam toward achieving his DTM. And as you know, only a very small percentage of Toastmasters actually achieve that. The last 4 years have been mentally stimulating and socially strengthening and have created emotions ranging from fear to hilarity. Today's presentation is from the Toastmasters Success Leadership Program, originally titled Leadership Part 1, Characteristics of Effective Leaders. Mark took the liberty to change this into the more descriptive, Identifying Your Leadership Strengths. Mark's very happy that you've chosen to spend 2 hours of your life with him today. Please help me give a warm welcome to Mark Richards.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to explore yourself. We're going to explore your leadership strengths. We're going to cover several different topics, but before I get into that, I wanted to give you an example of how leadership can play in a family relationship. There's an older woman who's part of a very wealthy family, and she is dying. Her 3 sons are very interested in each getting a portion or majority of her wealth. So they decide to each go out and buy an extravagant gift for her to win her favor. The first son buys a very nice car, a real expensive Rolls Royce, very happy with the car, and is ready to present it to her. The second son buys an estate. Thinks it would be a great place for her to spend her last few years. The third son, realizing what the first 2 have done, thinks to himself and says, I think I will take a leadership role here, and I'm going to do something very, very different. I'm going to go online and find a gift that is so unique that it will surely win her favor. So he goes online, and he looks and looks, and sure enough, he finds something very unique. He finds a parrot, a talking parrot, but not any parrot. This parrot knows the Bible, every verse of the Bible, forwards and backwards. He says this has got to himself, this has got to be the best gift that anyone could receive, because my mother is, after all, a God-fearing woman. At the time when they have the gathering where everyone gets together, the first son presents his gift to his mother. His mother says, that is a fabulous car. It's the greatest car I've ever seen. However, I've got a chauffeur, and I appreciate it. You've got a large family. Why don't you keep it for yourself? The second son presents his estate to her, photographs of it. She says to him, that is a fabulous estate. I can't even imagine how wonderful it would be to live there. However, I am comfortable where I am, and you've got a large family as well. Why don't you live in this state? To the third son she says, he introduces the parrot, he introduces it to her and says, this is the greatest parrot, you're not going to believe this, it's one of a kind. It does everything you want it to as far as talking about the Bible. You can ask it any verse, and it will recite the verse back to you. And she says, I know, in fact, that was the best chicken I've ever had. It's an example of a poor leadership decision maybe, but nevertheless an example of a sample of a leadership. Now, what we're going to talk about today are the following 4 items. We're going to talk about developing your understanding and identifying your own personal leadership strengths, and that comes across as far as personality qualities and your mental qualities. Then we're going to talk about the different types of leadership styles. There's 4 different types of leadership styles, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to also cover values and how that relates to yourself and the team that you might be leading. We're also going to talk about some ironies, a strength-weakness irony, and how that can play into your working as a leader in a team. Finally, we're going to talk about a leader match or a leader gap and how also that can apply and how you can overcome that when you're working with a team. Now, when I say team, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have, that you're an employee that has employees working for you. It could be that you're in a church group and you're all working together towards a common goal. And that could be your team. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an employer-employee relationship. It could be you're in Toastmasters and you have a group of people that are all working towards a common goal. Again, there's going to be a leader, you could be the leader, and hopefully, as a leader, you'll be able to not only identify your own strengths, but that of your team, and the goal is not only will you be able to identify yourself and your team's goals, find a way to match them and get closer to how the team works to make a more effective team, but also you'll be able to identify the strengths in other people. So if you have somebody that's working with you and you want to say an example in Toastmasters, for many of us are in Toastmasters, you'll be able to identify who's going to take your place as an officer, for example, or who might be a good officer in the club. So let's begin. First, of course, just turned off. Hold on a second. Oh, I know what I want to do. Sorry. I sent an email out on Thursday, and I asked for everyone to pick some leaders, a leader that they thought was interesting, and to get a few sentences together to talk about the leader. I asked you, if you would, I'm going to ask for a volunteer to start, and we're going to go and we're going to ask for 3 or 4 examples of great leaders and a few sentences that you might have to say about that leader. Who would like to start? Dennis, please.
Well, the leader that I chose was Mother Teresa, and I did that because I've always admired her for her courage and her moral high ground in the way she consistently dedicated herself to humanity, helping others, and was totally self-sacrificing in her pursuit of that.
Okay. So did everyone hear Mother Teresa? Good example. Anybody else have a good idea? Yes, Karen.
I like John C. Maxwell. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. And the thing that kind of summarizes his point of view is that good leaders are people that people want to follow. And to be a good leader, what you need to do, this is kind of a compilation of what he says, is you need to make them succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And his books lead you to that. And when I came out here to work in the film industry, I had no experience working with a team like I was going to work with. And I was making a lot of mistakes. And boy, he solved the problem.
Excellent. Good example of a leader. Yes, George.
I was going to say Nelson Mandela because he got through adversity, 27 years in prison, came out, really was charged of pulling a country together, and he could have taken a wrong path and tried to deal out retribution or all that. Instead, he was humble. He was conciliatory. He was also, a positive influence to pull people together, and that really set the tone for everything else. It could have been a disaster, but he turned it into a triumph.
Great. One more. Anybody? Asia.
I like Stephen Covey. I think the way that Stephen Covey talks about leadership and the way that we need to interact with people and for example, the 7 habits that people should have. I mean, he's honestly, to me, like John Maxwell, a very, very strong leader.
My personal choice was Abraham Lincoln. To me, Abraham Lincoln is one of the greatest leaders this country has ever had. Certainly one of the strongest, if not arguably the strongest president. He did 4 things that are incredible to this country. Four things. One of the things he did was he abolished slavery. He ended the Civil War. He connected the country with the Transcontinental Railroad, and he rebuilt the economic system of the country, all in his term as president. It's just amazing what he did. So that's my personal choice for leader. The way that we can talk about, let's start going ahead and I'll go into this program so we don't take too long, because I don't want to spend too much of your time. We're going to have a 10-minute break before we start our exercises. But to get started, we've got a quick description here. Leadership is the capacity to influence others to achieve worthwhile results. Avery, would you please read this?
Is it possible to move that out, you think?
To do what?
To move that out so that everyone can see it better?
If it's possible, yes.
Heads of the line.
I just didn't know if it was possible to do.
Well, I just don't know if there's enough cable length or not.
You're up to Mac.
Oh, maybe that tiny bit more.
What is it, the camera?
I think we can unplug that until we're done.
As long as we set the room back up the way that they had it for us, then we're fine.
Oh,
The white plug
Presentation details.
Is that better?
Great leadership.
Taking charge, good leadership. Go ahead, Avery, would you please read the quote?
Okay, the mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires. William Arthur Ward.
To me, a great leader is somebody who inspires, and to me, one of the prime examples in this day and age is Steve Jobs. I'll bring him up again. He started out with his own, creating his own company, and he turned his little company that he started with just one other person into the largest corporation in the world. It's pretty amazing. Let's talk about some personality qualities to start with. First personality quality would be somebody who is mature. Somebody who's comfortable with themselves, who's predictable and dependable. If you're independent, you're a free thinker who questions authority. If you're strong-willed, you're determined. You overcome obstacles quite easily. If you are courageous, you are willing to take risks and not afraid to fail. Someone who is ambitious is the kind of person who is an achiever. He's the person, or she is the person who arrives at work before everyone else and leaves after everyone else has gone home. If you're resilient, that means you're the kind of person, you're the kind of leader that will keep moving forward regardless of whatever challenges come up, whatever situation or organization might have come up with. And if you're a charismatic leader, you're the kind of person that is an inspiration to others, the kind of person that others want to follow. And again, if I have to go back to Steve Jobs, he created an aura around him that, I can't remember the word, but it was an aura around him that people just, they got into the zone. And whatever he was thinking, he was able to inspire them to think the same way. And if anyone could come up with that word, I'd be greatly appreciated. Because
Positive energy field.
there was something like this, a phantom zone. It was false reality kind of thing. But he created this, and people just believed in whatever he was saying, and they made it happen.
Like a vortex, you mean?
Almost. There's a word for it.
Reality distortion.
Reality distortion field. Thank you. And yes, that's what it became known as, and he was famous for that. Now, as far as mental qualities, we have somebody that's knowledgeable. A knowledgeable person, a knowledgeable leader, is somebody who understands the breadth and width of their organization, the goals of the organization, and how best to achieve the next level of that organization. A quick leader is somebody who is rapidly thinking and can make decisions quickly based on available information, like 2 + 2.
4.
Very good. If you're a good judge, that means you have strong opinions and you're willing to make decisions. And you're able to make those decisions based on those opinions and based on the vision that you hold. And finally, somebody who is foreseeing is somebody who sees the obstacles, perhaps, the challenges that an organization has. It doesn't look at it as a problem, but looks at it as an opportunity to proceed and achieve. Next, let's take a look at the organization values. Values are beliefs and principles by which we live. Now, if you have strong values, then they would be positive and constructive. That's what a value is. An example of that would be Lee Iacocca in the early 80s. When he took over the helm at Chrysler, Chrysler was failing. They were almost in bankruptcy. He looked at the situation and saw that his main obstacle, the main challenge, were the Japanese. Their cars were far superior to his. He made it his vision, his value, to beat the Japanese at their own game, to come up with cars that were better, or at least as good as, the competition, which were the Japanese. And he instilled that in all of his vice presidents. They took it to their people, and pretty soon the whole company's value, their mission, their vision changed. And he said it, and they went in motion, and they started producing cars that maybe in hindsight weren't as great as the Japanese, but he saved the company because of his positive and constructive value. Very important. Next, let's look at leadership styles. Leadership style is how you think, how you influence others, how you guide day-to-day actions, and how you develop structure. Those things are all related to how you, as a leader, might have and how you work in your team situation. There are let's talk about this. One strength, when taken to an extreme, becomes a weakness. I'll give you 5 examples of how that can be a problem in a company as a leader. First of all, if you are a quick decision maker, then you might make snap decisions if you took it to an extreme. If you're very confident, overconfidence and arrogance can come from being too confident. Next, if you are a determined leader, what can determination lead to if it's overused? An unwillingness, right, to recognize and perceive. If you are a democratic leader, which means you give everyone free rein to proceed, you can lead to wishy-washy decision making, and you may not be able to make decisions because you are too democratic. Again, you've taken it to an extreme. Finally, if you are an analytic type of person and you want to analyze all the aspects of your business, well, that can lead to an inability to make decisions. So these are what they call the irony. So you have to be careful once we all learn what our leadership style is, not to take it to an extreme. This is something called leader match and leader gap. When your knowledge and skills match that of a team or the situation, call that a leader match. However, if you don't match your team's needs, they call that a leader gap. And we're going to talk about how that applies to you and your team as we develop the models. Talking about models, this is a leadership style model that was developed in the 90s by Carl Wright. He was a psychologist who said there are 4 different types of people that are leaders. And the 4 different styles are reflection, influence, action, and structure. Somebody who has more of every one of these we all have. To which degree we have each one of these is something that you're all going to learn today. If you are more reflective, that means you review the situation more, you help to clarify vision, you clarify your mission. Those are things that you are constantly doing. If you're more of an influential leader, then you're the kind of person that will help others achieve what they want to get. You use the talents of your team to a greater extent by influencing them, by modeling behavior. If you're more of an an action-oriented person, then you're the kind of leader who wants to get things done. And you're going to do what it takes. You're going to tell people what to do, or you're going to let them do their own thing. But you want action. You want results. If you are a structured type person, then you're either going to have a tight structure, tight-knit organization, or you might do, again, I have to go back to Steve Jobs, you're going to have a free-range, loosely knit organization of people who all have the same goal and they're all working towards the same thing. And again, every one of us has these styles. To talk about it, to focus on it, I'm going to show you. See how it says intellectual leader? Oops, went too far. If you're an intellectual leader, then you will have more of a reflective score when we get to the exercises. If you're more of an action-oriented leader, then you will be a fix-it leader. However, you can also go to the other side and say, okay, somebody who is more influential could also be considered a bulldozer. Somebody who's just out there going too strong in that direction. It's possible, could work, but it may not work for you. And finally, you could be more of a bureaucratic leader because you develop such strong structures. A lot of large corporations have multiple heads. You have organizations like Google, who now is Alphabet, and they have broken off major chunks of their organization to each individually develop specific products. Lockheed did this in the 80s when they developed Skunkworks. Skunkworks would go out there and they would have entire organizations that would develop radical new technologies. They would do it on their own, but they'd still be part of this overall structure. That may or may not work for your particular organization or your needs. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to, there you go, exercise 1. If you open up your workbooks to page 9, I'm going to explain this, and we're going to each start, get a pen out. We're going to do our exercise now. We'll start the first one. This is where you're going to identify your leadership strengths. So once everyone's got the book open, if you look there under Part A, there's 5 scores you can achieve, that you can rate for each of the 4 areas that we just talked about, each of the 4 styles. It goes from number 1, rating number 1, I never or seldom act that way, to number 5, I usually or always act that way. Under reflection, for example, I have a clear vision or concept of the mission my team must accomplish. And you think to yourself, okay, in my case, I would say, I never or so, or I sometimes do that way, or I always. If you don't have a team that you're currently working with, think about if you were, say, in Scouts, or if you worked with a church group, or if you've ever had any kind of, even back in school, how did you act back in school when you had a class project? So it may not necessarily, like I said, be a team that you're currently working for. If for some reason that draws a blank in anybody's mind, answer it the best way you can as if you were working with a team, because in the future you can modify this, and this is something you will have, this is yours to keep, you can always modify it in the future. We're going to take about 15 minutes. Please go through each one of these 4, and when you're done, total each one up. You'll see you'll end up with 4 scores, and I want to time it for 15 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll score it, and then I will get back to you. So for now, I'm just going to be quiet. You go ahead and focus. The scoring chart on, let's see, at the bottom of page 10 there, this is how you work it. You take the scores from R, A, I, and S at the end of each of the sections, and you put them right next to where it says total score, total score, total score. Then you subtract 5 from each of those and end up with a number under adjusted score. If you multiply that, actually there's an example on the right side on 12, and on page 11. Then you multiply each of those numbers, and you can stop right there. So once everyone's done that, it shouldn't take you about a minute. Okay, now, if you, okay, so we got the numbers scored up. Now, if you will take, and you need a calculator? No, okay, hopefully not. Okay, if you look, okay, now if you look ahead to page, to page 15, you'll see a blank profile chart. If you would take each of the final scores from your leadership style scoring chart on page 12 and plot a point. So it's going to look like this.
Oh, I see.
You're going to have your chart, and then what we're going to do is we're going to plot. Watch how I do this. You take your 4 points, and then you draw lines between them, and you'll end up with your particular leadership style. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and that's based on your scores. Oh, there you go.
Oh, plot it on the one that's already done.
No, plot it on page 15. The blank one.
That's what I'm doing.
Yes.
So between 75 and 100 is 25, and try to guess.
Well, it doesn't matter. This is all very fluid. We're just
So
getting.
90 would be close to the 100.
Yeah, it doesn't matter exactly because we're looking for where your strengths lie. Not necessarily the exact number because, like I said, it's very fluid. Every situation can change. And every situation demands that you look at your strengths and then move from there. Okay, so everyone's got that done? Now, exercise 2 starts on page 12. And this is where, if you don't have a team, you need to be creative. And this is part B, evaluation, and evaluating your team leadership needs. And again, it's the same concept. Number 1 through 5, one is a significant weak point, and number 5, a significant strong point. Just answer each of the 4 sections, reflection, action, influence, and structure, and you'll end up with 4 totals, and then you can, right on the bottom of page 13, you can do the same thing as far as scoring is concerned. And again, I'm going to time this for, let's time it for 10 minutes. I think everyone is familiar with this now. We can do this in 10 minutes.
More math.
What's that?
More math. More math, more calculation.
Sorry. I know you didn't think this was going to be a big deal, a big classroom project. However, this will end up with some very interesting results for every one of you, I guarantee it. plot it just yet.
Square.
Score it, and don't plot it. Okay, has everyone scored? Or I should ask, has anybody not scored their results? Okay, we'll go
I
ahead and
didn't understand the assignment.
That's a whole different issue. Sorry, Dave.
John Toastmaster.
Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do next is, on page 15, if you take a look at the screen, you'll see that there's a, oops, sorry, too fast. Page 15, there it is, okay. On page 15, you'll see that you can see how there's got gray dots and the other one was black? Since we don't have two types of pens, draw X's on the chart for your team leadership and then draw dashed lines between them to indicate a different color. On the same chart on page 15. So now, when you're done, you should have a solid quadrangle, and we should have a dashed quadrangle. And you're going to notice something interesting.
Two of the same scores.
That's perfect. That's actually good. It's
But
actually
it
good.
makes it difficult to.
Yeah, I thought I was did one of the assignments wrong because the numbers were similar.
They could
Put it next to.
They could be, because, and I'll explain what that means, and how that's a good thing.
Is the -5 to compensate for any kind of cockiness that we might have?
It's actually, it's just a math trick is what it is. It's because you want to come out with, I tried to figure it out myself, and I'm not a math genius, but it has to do with the fact that there's, on each one of the assessments, there's five individual items on each one. But if you just took 5 times 5, you'd end up with 20, you'd end up with, it wouldn't work, you have to subtract 5. I tried figuring it out and decided I'd have to ask my son, he's a math wizard. I'm not sure how the math works, but if you follow it, it does work. Okay, and when everyone's got their second profile charted, then I'll continue. Yeah, just so you can tell the difference between the two. Well, most everyone's done, so I'm just going to explain what the last step is, and it's simply to notice that you'll have, what we end up with is your leadership gap or your leadership match. And the gap would be the difference between where your strength is on any one of the 4 axes axes. And your match would be anywhere where your 2 points are similar. If you have a large gap between your particular leadership style and your team leadership needs, then you can, as a leader, adjust how you work with that team in that area. If you, for example, are a very action-oriented person, well, in this case, I'll use this example, you're a very reflective individual, but your team doesn't seem to think so. The team is more, in this case, very structured. So you might adjust yourself, must adjust your thinking a little bit, and think, well, my team is more structured. They like the structure, so I'm going to think less about how I do things and employ more structure in my business or my organization or whatever group you're working with, whatever common goal you want to achieve. If you have a match between your style and your team's style, then you know that you're on the right track with coordinating a common goal for that group, for that effort, whatever that might be. You can use this leadership gap match, this analysis, anytime you put together an organization, anytime you're working towards a common goal, whether it's a project in school, whether it's something for church, whether it's a community effort, a fundraiser, you can think about how you, as a leader, are best matched with the people that you've recruited to work with you. If there's a gap, you want to get close as you can to a match. Most of the time it involves adjusting yourself, but if you have a team that's loosely organized and you're more structure-oriented, then you can focus, you can guide their efforts to become more structured. If you're more action-oriented, and they're not, they're kind of wishy-washy, they're all over the place, then you can help guide them using some of the principles that we talked about today to more closely match what the best choice would be for that organization. This is the ultimate goal. Because of this, you've now got a take-home message. And that is, you've identified your leadership style. You can more closely now use this to match your style with your teams, and you'll be able to identify other people's styles. You can use this workbook in your organization, in your whatever team you have. You could erase them, you can write it, you can put it in your own words. And the point of this whole thing is what we see right here. This is what we're leaving with. I started with describing what we'd end up with. This is where we've ended up with. That's my conclusion for the presentation. There are future or other presentations that involve leadership. I decided to do a leadership project instead of a communication project because although we in Toastmasters spend a lot of time talking and communicating, what is the leadership motto? What is the motto of Toastmasters? Does anyone know?
You talk about the
We're
promise.
leaders.
The leaders are made.
Where leaders are made. And that is the focus of Toastmasters today. It's not just learning how to speak, it's learning how to lead. And the reason for all of that, and why Toastmasters chose that, is because America is has a big leader gap, if you will. There are a lot of leadership roles that need to be taken in business, in communities, and in government that we're not able to fulfill. And if more people can learn how to become effective leaders by understanding their own strengths, by understanding the teams they work for and work with, then America will grow as a country, and we as Toastmasters can help fulfill some of that need. So I decided to do this leadership project to start with. The other two are as interesting as this. They take what we've done here and take it to the next level. I may or may not do one of those in the future. Other Toastmasters most likely will. For those who aren't familiar, working toward the Distinguished Toastmaster recognition that I've worked for all of these last 4 years has led up to this workshop today. I've employed my skills. I've employed the things that I've learned in working with people and putting together presentations to help educate, elucidate, and hopefully entertain to some small degree those of you that are here. I thank you for coming. We finished much earlier than I thought. Well, it's just fine, I'm sure, for everyone here. You've walked, hopefully you've gained enough information here that it will be of value to you in the near and far future.
You want to spell
If you would fill out the evaluation form, one of the things we did not do, actually, you know, before we finish, if we've got some time, I do want to talk about something. Let's go back onto page, we didn't do this, page 12. We can talk about this now, once we've been through the whole project. The first question we have that we can think about is, how accurately do you feel the profile describes your leadership style? So anybody want to give it a, yes, yeah.
It actually, I think it very accurately does that for me. That's at work, I have a lot of cross-functional ad hoc teams throughout the year that I need to work with in order to complete various projects. And I'm very much a hybrid type of person, kind of in the middle of left brain, right brain. And that's reflected in my personality. I'm a little farther on the introvert side, but I do have an extrovert side too. It's really reflected in my entire life. And this leadership style reflects that as well. They're very close to each other, and they're fairly balanced too. So I think it reflects.
Was anybody surprised by the results? Dennis?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I thought I had some strengths in some areas, but what I realized was that there was an overlap in what I regarded in terms of structure. That was my lowest scores on in both categories. So what I identified is I need to take more of a look at how I've structured my team and to do some more communications, how the expectations and structure. Yeah.
I'm kind of sorry about my work in a sense, because I didn't have these leadership challenges, because when I worked with a large crew, we had an exact time schedule, and that did not vary. I never held up the camera, not 1 minute in 25 years. I had hired people who were very good at what they did, and if they didn't prove themselves to be good, they weren't there the next day. So I think maybe I was kind of tough, but.
So you were more of a bureaucratic leader, or maybe more of a.
No, I don't think I was bureaucratic. I think everything was well organized, and one of the things I learned from John Maxwell was to clearly lay out the goals, and that would be time goals. And we were working on a show out. Anyway, it was. Tell me the name of the stupid show. I can never remember.
Oh, the one way out.
Yeah. Anyway, so we had we arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock in the morning the camera rolled. And we had 300 extras to dress, because they were all going to be rained on by the end of the day. So we had to dress them. We had I think we had 12 costumers. And what it amounted to, and I figured all this out, they had 12 minutes for each, but those 12 minutes overlapped by 3. They were working with 3 people at the same time. And we had all 300 dressed at 8 o'clock and ready to go.
Does anybody notice
Can
that?
hardly get dressed at 8 o'clock.
Did anybody did anybody realize a leadership style of their own that, if taken to an extreme, could become a problem? Anybody? Yes.
Well, okay, go ahead. I just noticed that I'm more skewing towards reflective and influential, whatever, but especially reflective. I really want to, do a range of options and that kind of thing. And if you take it to extreme, you can get bogged down into the weeds. You can get delayed if you take that to the extreme. But a question I kind of thought about though and would pose is how much of your leadership skills is nature versus nurture? Because in my career, I've been involved more with indirectly managing people, indirect teams, where it's more important to get them to buy into the vision and buy into why we were doing this. And then you had, I didn't really get to choose these people. I had to discern what their strengths were and then somehow work it into being able to get the job done. So how much of that is my natural leadership skills versus my experiences in having to lead. So I don't know if that's a question now, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I agree with George. One of the things I've learned is I'm more reflective, but then that actually, when you reflect too much, your action tends to be delayed, and you try to make sure everything's right before you start with everything. That can really delay it. And you tend to procrastinate until things are too late and deadlines are close by. And yeah, I have to be more structured, more action.
So this hopefully will, again, the idea of this is now that you know what your leadership style is, George, do you agree, Karen? If there's any challenges to your organization, you could look at your leadership style now that you know what it is and make adjustments. Maybe become more action-oriented, for instance, and less reflective. You could become more structured and less influential. There are combinations too. You might find if you did your chart, and everyone's got a different chart, you might find that you're high scoring on 2 areas, and there's combinations. So each of these combinations help you determine how you might work with your team.
An ideal leader, would it be a person who's got a lot of reflection and structure that's encompass almost 100 points on each end? Is that considered?
Not any one person is going to have 100% in every area. Most people are more one or the other. The main thing is not just to know what your own individual style is, it's also to know what your team is, which is the point of the exercise. And that you can match, because if you are 100% in all of your areas, but let's say the team that you're working with, they need high structure, and they're not so action-oriented. Well, maybe you need to adjust how you, as a leader, work with them.
Oh, so you got to match.
You want to get the leader match, not have a leader gap between what you do and what your team, what you're trying to accomplish is.
Could I just comment?
Yes.
I introduced, I had a team working on, we had an extreme time schedule and a lot of people we had to dress because they were driving the truck away at 5 o'clock, that was it, period. And so I wanted to talk with my team at the end of the day, and I said, how did you feel about how it was structured today? And this one girl said, I was really pissed with you all day. She said, I saw
That's
you.
what's called a leadership gap.
I saw you give us assignments. Each one of us had assignments like this. And you didn't assign anything to yourself. I was really pissed off.
Okay.
And she said, what I saw through the day is that you worked twice as hard as the rest of us. Because I was answering questions, filling gaps. If a costume size wasn't there, I had to go into the stock and find the piece. And I had to get the stuff to the tailors and back to the truck. And that's true, I did. To just oversee it, it looked like I had no job, but I had all the jobs.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges as a leader. I know that I've struggled with that. My tendency is to do too many things myself and not assign to
Delegate.
my team. Yeah, so delegating is really, really important. And that's something we learn as officers in Toastmasters as well.
You actually learn them as area director. When you become area
Yes.
director, especially I also know that in contests, you cannot do everything yourself. You gotta be focused on one thing and then other people, you have to outsource some of the tasks. You cannot do it.
And I think part of that has to do with having faith in your team members
Yes.
and trusting them to fulfill it and not thinking that they're not going to do it right.
Yes.
Right.
So I think being a good leader is having that. The closely you can become with your team members, the more they can be autonomous to do the right job, know what they're doing.
You
Right?
just pointed out one of John Maxwell's sayings, if you can be the leader of a nonprofit, you are a real leader because you're not waving that check over their head.
Yeah, and that's true of Toastmasters too.
That's
being
exactly
all
what
volunteer.
Toastmasters is, yeah. That's where you
That's the thing
learn, you learn the hard way.
with a lot of leaders. Our objective is to create other leaders as well. And that's the main objective. With Toastmasters, I thought we're just here to run things, but it's not. We're supposed to try and look for people to encourage them to build their leadership style, to step up and eventually take roles.
Right, we're looking for replacements.
Replacements,
Right.
yeah.
Mhm.
You do a good
Yeah.
job and you can find a replacement for yourself to do as good a job, then you win.
Yeah.
Chantel?
I was gonna say, I consider myself a very detail-oriented person, so that when I make a mistake or I catch a mistake, then it feels like, oh, I'm stupid, everyone's gonna think I'm incompetent. But
I relate with you. I'm the same exact way.
I did it
Yeah.
this morning with work, but at the same time, I chair a nonprofit, a chapter for LA, and that would never even cross my mind. And everyone's like, you're doing a great job, but when it comes to what I'm paid for, I'm like, I mixed up the secretary with the treasurer and I sent it out. How stupid am I? They're gonna be like, she doesn't know what she's doing. But it's not that case at all.
Yeah.
But it's just, you get bogged down in that, it distracts you from.
And that's an important point you made, because just like Steve Jobs and all the other leaders we talked about today, none of them learned anything from their successes. It was their failures that taught them something. And a lot of people
must be a success.
and part of that is admitting it, right? Saying,
Must be good.
you got to say to your team, I made a mistake, let's do better. Because then everybody can say, oh, well, he's strong because he can admit that and move forward,
Thomas Edison
right?
did not fail 1,000 times when he was trying to invent the light bulb. He found 1,000 ways how a light bulb doesn't work.
Yeah.
I like the quote from Richard Branson. He said, the reason I'm very successful is because I failed so many times. And that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, Toastmasters is the best place to fail. People are so encouraging. They don't make fun of you. They don't look down at you, but they evaluate you, encourage you to develop more. And that's what leadership is all about. Not telling people, oh, you did this so bad, you should have done this better. No, you should say, great job, you did well, you could improve it this other way. So,
Yeah.
May I support you in your observation?
yes.
When I was young, I was running around bragging about my successes. We all have them. And when I started going to Beverly Hills parties and things like that and mixing with really successful people, all they ever talked about was their failures, and they were usually laughing like a son of a gun, or how the BMW dealership would be taking advantage of them. They have a light touch. It's not like the end of the world.
Wow, that's a good idea. Yeah. If we go to a party, we talk about, not our success, but all our failures. That would be great. Bring
The next holiday party.
It makes you feel good when you see somebody else that you see as successful, that they failed at something. It's like, oh, that's a ray of sunshine.
I know.
Because it's like, it's not just me.
What are the best comedians? What do? They make fun of themselves.
Yes.
Self-deprecation.
Exactly.
Self-deprecation. That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a great humor style. And boy, I could have a whole comedy thing.
Well, one of the things we learned with the comedy, we both did the comedy class with Jerry Corley, is self-deprecation is really amazing, because when you're up there on the stage and you can make fun of yourself, you become a hero, right? Because everybody can relate to you and go, oh yeah, I know what that's like, right? And you're doing it in front of an audience.
There's a very popular comedian, I don't remember his last name, his first name is Mitch. Gentleman has cerebral palsy. He is hysterical. He comes on stage and he's walking with a very cerebral palsy type walk. He gets to the microphone, the first thing he usually says is, ladies and gentlemen, I can't help but tell you, this just happened to me since I got here. And just what a way to start a comedy show. And so it's very important. I also wanted to point out on page 15, right above where you did your final scoring, there's some discussion questions, and we don't have to go into them, about your team. And these are questions that you can ask yourself when you're working with a team, or discuss with your team. For example, are there any pressing problems facing the team? Is our moral and social climate healthy? Does anybody need specific attention? Any difficult or divisive issues facing the group? Is the group breaking into factions? So all of this in this book can really help. So definitely don't throw this away if you're in any kind of a leadership role or might be in the future. It will definitely come to pass that you might use it.
What is an autocratic leader? Because I've heard people say autocratic, and I'm just trying to figure out.
That's more of a bureaucrat. Autocratic
So
is
That's more
autocratic is-
dictatorial.
Dictatorial,
Autocrat,
somebody-
autocrat would be,
Think of Donald Trump.
Okay.
That's demagogue.
You're fired.
they use autocorrect a lot.
Spell checker on, right?
So that's similar to bureaucratic then? Or no, not
No.
similar?
More
No.
dictatorial, more you
One.
do what I say type of.
When you were very small, your parents were autocratic.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Do what I say or I'm gonna punish you.
Yeah.
Why?
My
Because
way
I
or-
said so.
My way is the right way, right? My way or the highway.
Right, okay.
So-
Got it.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions about what we talked about today?
Well, I was blessed to work for a beer wholesaler for 12 years, and we had excellent leadership. And I think of my boss, Charlie Beach, as removing the obstacles in our paths. I also learned from Charlie that not everyone is equal. Some people don't really get it or really commit to moving forward. But if you build on one success after another success, pretty soon you build a team.
Anything else? Last comments?
That beer distributorship, by the way, now exists over by the Highway 5, that big, long warehouse business. We started out $250,000 a year income. Look at it now.
Yeah, it's
We
gotta
control
be-
all the major brands in the valley.
Yeah, I know that.
Best way to
On the
distribute.
five,
Allied now.
on the east side of the 5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's even a gentleman named Tony Shy. Does anybody know who he is? Yeah, he started out, and he was 18 years old, and I don't know how to spell the last name, but it's pronounced Shy or Shay. Chinese fellow who started out working as a newspaper, he delivered newspapers, and that didn't, failed at that. And then, we're talking about failures, and then he decided to do mail order. So he started doing a mail order thing. He read someplace where if you buy this product, you can sell it. And so we started buying product and selling it. He went door to door. He failed at that. And then he hit upon a main thing. Have you ever heard of, okay, I'm gonna get this wrong, but it's a shoe manufacturer, a shoe sales company that went on the web. And again, it was probably his 4th or 5th business.
Zappos?
Zappos, thank you. 23 years old, guy makes so much money that he sold the company to, and I'm not gonna get the story right, but he sold the company, made $1 million on his 4th try at a business. He figured out what worked and what didn't work for himself and for his team. He went on to create, I probably should have been more prepared, but he went on to create another company, and I think it was Instagram. He created
You
Instagram.
created Instagram?
I think it was something, yeah, it was either Instagram or something like that.
Really?
And he went on to create this company that was then bought by Amazon and it just made another $1 million+ dollars. Millions and millions of dollars. And it all started because he had
Yeah.
a drive when he was young. And he started out doing these things and learning what worked for him and his team. He understood his leadership style, understood his team's leadership style, and he was a success. Doesn't always have to come in dollars. Could be leading a nonprofit, leading a Toastmasters club. You know, the success of a club is often based on the leaders matching their style to the club and the club's needs. Yes.
That's how my business was too. I had a guy who did continuity. You sit on the set and you watch the people and be sure that their collar is the same in the beginning as in the next shot. You watch everything to be sure it's the same. And I had a guy whose uncle was a very famous actor, and his mother and dad were actors too. And so he grew up in the industry. Well, there wasn't anyone who could intimidate that guy, because actors will lots of times on the set intimidate people, like costumers, hairstylists, makeup people. And so I hired him over and over and over again. He was lousy at taking notes. So I always had someone else taking the notes, and he was doing the interface with these people. And that's one of the things, my people were always very good at one particular thing, and that's why I brought them on. And I sort of had the structure up here, and they all worked down here together and created it, made it happen. And I think that's a little bit different sometimes and our time schedule was not dictated by us. And so it was a really unique thing, and the people had to be really expert at what they do. Because I've seen situations where the people aren't experts, where they don't know what they're doing, and oh my
Cost
word,
money.
yeah.
Mistakes cost money.
Oh yeah.
Miscommunication costs money.
Yeah, someone forgot to tell the city to turn off the water sprinklers one time, and they came on right in the middle of the scene. We had to undress everyone. The makeup artist had to start all over again. He had to take the hairdryer and dry everyone because we were on location. We were at home where we had the dryer.
That's a lot of money.
It cost a lot of money, yeah.
Todd, can you think of anything in your ESL or ELS that has anything to do with all of this? Any personal stories that you can share with us? Todd's my brother, by the way.
Hey.
He works at ELS Lights.
It's a lighting company, they're located in Sun Valley. And, I do internal operations. I'm chief financial officer, and so I oversee a component of operations, but also the finance side. And everything we're talking about is applicable for me, and I think personally, being more of a reflective individual, I've been there for 16 years. And so kind of making sure to focus on the action orientation of, as we do lighting and production lighting, so red carpet events and movie premieres and so on. The ability to meet the needs of the production, which has a very short time frame and so on. I kind of get out of my comfort zone there and kind of take a focus on execution. And so, now it's kind of second nature, but kind of an observation of taking this exercise and applying it, going forward is you'll kind of know you're working on a gap area when you focus on it. If you kind of feel really uncomfortable, you'll kind of know you're there working on it. So that's an observation.
Okay. Yes.
Just one thought regarding in my thought could be a good leader. A good leader, of course, he or she doing the best for the company in all areas that in this book. Whatever is possible to do the best for the business, for the company. But it should not be done by all means, because people there. So if the contribution to the company exceeds, it goes, it doesn't do good to the people working in the company, then
it's detrimental,
it should
right?
be stopped, that contribution to the company.
Yeah, and that brings an important point. It's where people, right? You're working with people, you're not working with machines.
Right.
And you got to be sensitive to the human nature.
That's where the strength, weakness, iron comes in. You can be really strong in one area, but if you take it to the extreme, it becomes a weakness. And good observation.
When there's a mission statement and everyone signs on to that, buys into that, that there's a unity there. And that, you know, if you can't sign on to it, then this isn't the place for you. You know, that already starts with the structure.
Right.
You do that when you're talking about their strengths and their strengths, and there's, you have the overall vision, when you presented the mission statement, you know. And then you were talking about values. People get to know your personal, your values, how we negotiate the world. So it's not a question of is it detrimental to that individual. If they know what the mission statement is, if they know what the mission is, then you can implement the leadership styles and the team skills. If they don't, then I don't care what your leadership style is, if people aren't aware of what the mission is, they're going in different directions. It's difficult to make a cohesive team.
Yeah, we have a company, Resolution, a company, and the entire corporation, I'm in one business unit, but the entire corporation is about roughly a $3 billion corporation, and the CEO at the very top in Connecticut, there's a resolution, it's a 150-year-old company, and the founder wrote this resolution, and the CEO demands that every meeting, the first thing that we read is that resolution, and it's about putting your whole mind on the business, working ethically both with employees and with customers, and because that is read at every meeting, that really does flow down through all of the companies, and ethics and all of those things that are listed in the resolution there's a high premium put on all of that as a result of that. It's not just a slogan on the wall, it's recited every meeting, and that makes a big difference.
That's what we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good point.
Good point.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's the
That's
same
the United
thing.
States mission. That makes sense. For the individuals in the United States.
Yeah.
I like
Now I have to read
See,
the
we have to learn that.
big Australian, yes I will, okay, I'll have to.
Selena, do you know the Pledge of Allegiance? They're both from Australia, so. They have Avery's been doing this Pledge of Allegiance for over a year now. You should know it. We do it every 2 weeks. And you're in 3 clubs.
Yeah,
There's no excuse, Avery.
But that's my for leadership as well, so I gotta work on it.
There you go. That's your project. Okay, if there's no other questions, then any last comments? If not, no? Okay, good. We will close. Thank you very much for coming. Well done.
GTM, right? GTM?